Hello, this is Karen Johnson with another in our series of exploring the history of Proctors in Schenectady. And today we have Teddy Foster, the campaign director of UPH. It is June 9th, 2017. And you may wonder, what does UPH have to do with Proctors? Well, that's what we're really going to talk about today. So Teddy, you're in a very exciting situation. You're raising money, you're getting ready to create a new arts venue in Saratoga. Tell me a little bit about what you're up to.
Well, it's been a long time coming, Karen, because this restoration of this building has been going on since about 2003. We were like the little engine that could. We just keep going up, 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 up. And I think our lucky stars crossed the day that I called Philip Morris, not knowing who he was, but called to ask for advice, and that was in 2012. So now we are going for complete restoration of the building. We've raised 90% of our $5.5 million capital campaign, and at last, we're almost at the top. We're going to shut down for construction in September.
So September 2017, you're on the road.
We're on the road
And
to opening night.
And the hope is that opening night will be in what
We're
month
hoping that
and
the
year?
opening night will be the late fall of 2018. May not work out, might be early 2019. But it's an old building. We don't know what we're going to find. So.
Well, we talked about UPH, and that's Universal Preservation Hall.
Right.
What is it?
So Universal Preservation Hall is a former old Methodist church that was built in 1871. And it was built because the Methodists were very big in this part of the country. I know that because my father was Methodist. And they built this, it's very cathedral-like. They built it so it would be a place for worship, but also a place where famous speakers of the day could come and speak to the public. The Methodists kept that until 1976, when they realized that the building was falling into a lot of disrepair. And so they decided to build a new, more modern facility out on the east side of Saratoga, which they did. They moved out in 1976, and at that time they sold our building to a very small African-American Baptist congregation called the Universal Baptist Church. This was an outgrowth from a congregation in Albany, and it was about a dozen African-American women who were going to grow the church. And the leader of it was Reverend Minnie Burns, who was just a fantastic, brave visionary. So they took over the church, and they did not have the wherewithal to maintain it or sustain it, because it was physically, the building was failing. So by the year 2000, it was condemned by the city of Saratoga and slated for demolition. And it was at that time where the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation, the president of it, who was a man named Jeff File, realized what was going to happen to the building. They knew the historic significance of it, which I will tell you in a minute, and got a group of people together from Saratoga, and privately they raised $3 million to salvage and stabilize the building. Along with that, they did a deal with the Reverend that they could have a place to worship. We would rebuild them a place to worship within the facility, and they could stay there until they didn't exist anymore, and we would turn the rest of the building into a cultural center year-round, performing arts and community events.
So that was agreed from the very beginning.
That was agreed from the beginning.
Now, about what year was that?
So that was right around 2000. By the time we got our nonprofit status and the pledges came in and work began, it was 2003.
And at that time, about how much money was spent on the building?
About $2.7 million we spent to stabilize it.
Just to stabilize it.
Just to stabilize
You know, this reminds me so much of Proctors, because by the time we got Proctors, the roof was leaking, and there was a tremendous expense that actually the city bore to get it just so it was watertight.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, ours was so bad. The building was literally failing under the rotted beams in the roof and the weight of the slate roof. And it was caving in on itself. The poor little ladies, they didn't know how to deal with it. So if you went up into our great hall, which is really now quite beautiful, the balconies were lined with hundreds of red rubber garbage cans full of water, because that's the only thing that they knew to do to catch the water, was to catch the water.
How'd they get it out of there?
Well, there's a couple of the stained glass windows upstairs that actually open like French doors, so they would dump them out.
I can just see the ladies carrying the buckets to the window.
Yeah.
They must have been pretty tough.
They were really tough. They were really tough, and they swore the building would not fall down. I mean, they were basically being evicted from the building, and Reverend Minnie Burns, she just went to the mayor, who was Ken Klotzen, and he said, "Reverend, you got to get out of there. It's dangerous." And she said, "That building will not fall down." And it didn't.
Sounds like a religious pronouncement,
It
doesn't it?
was, it was, and it didn't.
So when the Methodists had the church, was the second floor like a sanctuary?
Right. The second floor, Great Hall, we call it, was the sanctuary, and it had a huge pipe organ and a huge choir loft and would comfortably seat 600. It had a cantilevered balcony. It's a horseshoe-shaped cantilevered balcony, which at the time, I always love to tell this story, at the time the townspeople were very worried that this balcony was going to fall down. The balcony held 200. So at one point, the minister of the church had 200 people come in, stand on the balcony. They had the press come, and he asked the people to jump up and down on the balcony to prove that it would not fall down.
So there were prayers first, though.
There must have been, and hallelujahs after, right? The historic significance of it was not only was it, a place where they worshiped every Sunday, but it was a big speaker house for famous people of the day to come and speak to the public. So rather than tearing this beautiful old building down and turning it into a parking lot or a vacant lot, we were able to save it for the future. And the historic significance is Teddy Roosevelt spoke in that great hall as a sitting president. William Howard Taft, as a sitting president, spoke there to the public, to 600 people, probably or more. And then we think it was it was right after the Civil War, so it was the 1870s, and we had very famous abolitionists speak there. Frederick Douglass, Henry Ward Beecher, William Jennings Bryan, they all spoke there. Senator Brackett came and spoke there, but he lived in Saratoga. And I don't know if Ulysses Grant spoke there when he was up at his cottage. We haven't historically corroborated that, but it was a really big deal back then. And the thing that I love about it, the Methodists built it as a place where people could come together to do things, whether it was to worship or to have a meal or to hear somebody speak. And that's really how we've kept it alive, was keeping it open for all different kinds of things. And that's actually our vision for the future, is to be a place where people can come together for music, for education, for lectures, for whatever. Yeah, it's going to be great.
So right now, when you come in the ground floor, there is a chapel, a very pretty chapel.
Yep.
And then there's a big room.
Right.
Was that the potluck dinner room?
That's the community room. That's what we
Okay.
call it, and that's where the potluck always was. It's been a food pantry. It was a place in the past where AA had their meetings. We've used it for corporate meetings. We've used it for a jazz music series. We've had fair trade market there. We've had holiday markets there. We use it for a lot of different things. The community room is really a nice size, and it'll hold about 150 people. It's also, at this point, handicap accessible, which the upstairs is not. It has heat, which the upstairs does not. And the
Is
bathrooms
this a
are
sore point about the heat in the middle of this cold winter?
Yeah, well, it's cold in the hall, and that's why we only have been running seasonally, because you can't possibly use upstairs. It's just, even if we turn our blowers, we have blowers up there. If we turn those on 3 days in advance, we can still only get the room to about 55 degrees. So nobody wants to be up there. It's just brutal.
So part of the planning for the future is to get the heating system to work.
We're going to have heat and air conditioning and an elevator and lots of wonderful acoustical and sound things.
It's going to be like heaven.
It's going to be heavenly. Yeah. Our little chapel will remain exclusively for our congregation, which is now down to about 4 people. And they only come on Sundays, but that's our agreement with them, and we're honoring it.
And some of them are on your board as well.
Yes, we have 3 congregation members on the board.
Which is very nice to have their continuity of their participation.
Yeah, we love having them on it. I think they like being on it because we're all pointed at the same goal. We all would like to see the building finished. And they're motivated by realizing the Reverend Burns' dream. That's, you know, they would love to see it done in their lifetime. And they understand what we're doing and how great it's going to be for the community. So we love having them on our board.
So talk about her dream and how she saw this developing.
Well, her dream was to have her have a place of worship in Saratoga. And she was willing to do whatever it took to get this building completed. She understood what our objective was. She agreed with it, and she was all in. She was a fabulous woman. And she passed away, I think, about 4 years ago. She was 97. She was great. She was a wonderful woman. And she would listen. She would give her opinion. And sometimes it wasn't exactly what you wanted to hear. She was willing to compromise because she knew we were both pointed in the right way. An interesting story, a great story is they didn't want any hard liquor in the building. And we have had weddings in the building because it was an easy way to make some money to pay our bills. So she came in for church one Sunday, and she saw some liquor bottles, and I got the phone call, and she demanded I come in. So I went in, and she said, "Miss Teddy," she pointed her finger right in my face, "Miss Teddy, I told you there was to be no liquor in this building." I said, "I know." I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "With all due respect, do you want to see this building finished?" She said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Well, then we've got to have weddings. And in order to have successful weddings, we have to have liquor at them. Otherwise, nobody's going to book with us. And that's how we make money." She went, "Praise the Lord." And that was it. She got it.
She was flexible.
She was flexible.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah, she was great. She was great.
She apparently was quite influential in the whole Capital District in the African American church movement.
I believe that, yeah.
Because we had her honored at our Gospel Jubilee one year.
I was here for that, yeah.
And it's quite a wonderful thing when you think about it. Now, how did you personally get involved with this?
Well, this might be too long for this tape, but so I was a stay-at-home mom for about 20 years and raised my children in Saratoga and was very involved in school and then got involved with a number of charitable organizations downtown. And I always felt that my volunteerism was at an executive level volunteer because I always kind of rose to the top, you know, and led people. So when I turned 40, I went back to Skidmore and finished my degree, which I had never done. And then I ended up working for a few companies, but I ultimately ended up working for GE Financial. And when I got hired by GE, I actually worked for them for about 12 years. In 2001 or 2, I can't remember right now, I got transferred to Richmond, Virginia for a great job promotion. So I kept my home in Saratoga and I moved and rented a house in Richmond, Virginia. That's where I was. I had to give up all my volunteerism. So I came back into town. I stayed down there for a couple years. Really, I hope I don't offend anybody, but I really didn't like it in the South. I'm a native New Yorker. I just moved too fast. And so I came back. I took a lateral move and came home and worked for them out of my home in Saratoga. So somebody called me and asked me to have lunch with them. So I went and had lunch, and she says, "Oh, I'm involved with this wonderful new project you have to see. So we had lunch and we walked up the street and there was Universal Preservation Hall. And she walked me in there and it was a bomb site. There was scaffolding, huge scaffolding from starting in the basement up through all the floors to hold up the roofs so they could get in there to do the work. The bell tower with the steeple was caving in on itself and leaning that way. I mean, and I'm looking and I'm thinking,
You needed Minnie's prayers at that time.
yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, what can I do? I can't do anything to help them. I'm an insurance executive. There's nothing I can do to help them. Please don't ask me to be on the board, you know. And of course they asked me to be on the board, and of course I felt bad, so I said yes. So I joined that board in 2006, and then did help them with a lot of fundraising events and stuff like that. In 2008, the recession came along at the end of 2008, and I lost my job with GE in early 2009. I worked for one of their companies called Genworth Financial at that point, and their stock dropped. They got taken off the stock exchange, and they instantly laid off 1,000 people, and we were never able to interview again to go back. So I lost my job. The board president quit. Board members jumped ship like it was the Titanic because they were going to go take care of their own stuff. All the pledges went away. Nobody was making good on their pledges. And the board, in their infinite wisdom at that point in time, felt that, well, Teddy's not working now, so she needs something to do, so let's vote her to be board president. So
Okay.
Here I was, no job, no prospects at that point in time, and basically saddled with this huge project.
I think you liked that challenge.
Yeah, I didn't at that moment, but it's interesting because I've always loved the building. There's just something about the building that's so captivating. There's a very wonderful spirit about it. There's just something about it that makes you feel good when you're in there. And so I just decided, okay, we're going to give this a try. We had just hired Mary Beth. She was only working very part-time. Her children were little. And so we just kind of limped along for a few years. And in retrospect, I will say this. I'm very proud that I've had a hand in saving this building, but the real truth of the matter is I think that the building has saved me. I mean that wholeheartedly, because my life, even though I don't make the salary that I made when I worked for a GE company, my life has improved immensely. It's really wonderful.
Well, you have such enthusiasm for everything you undertake, and you've been extremely successful. Tell me how the Saratoga community has responded to this idea.
They absolutely, we are riding a huge wave of motivation right now. In the beginning, the first design that they did for the hall did not really make sense. The one thing that stood out about it was it had an elevator. The only elevator was in the back of the building. Mm-hmm. And they had actually done the footings for that and everything when they stabilized it. But the people who give to a lot of things in Saratoga didn't like our project because the design didn't make sense. So they supported it minimalistically in the beginning, but then would never take the next step. When we got really desperate and really out of money in 2012 is when we made the call to Philip Morris, because I was ready to shut the doors and didn't know what else to do. So we talked to Philip and Tony Mashuda, and he said, "Oh my God, we've been talking about you. We'd like to come up and see the building." And that was actually the best thing that ever happened to us, because Philip came in with his executive team. They stayed for over 4.5 hours. They went through every inch of the building. It was like a love-in. We just all fell in love with each other, and we knew then that we wanted to go forward. So that's when we made the agreement with the architect, and we started on a new design. And the new design, coupled with the very successful feasibility studies that we did around financial, support and usage, it all just worked out great. And that's how we're able to keep people going on it now. They're donating generously. They want to help. They want to come in as a volunteer. This has been wonderful. All levels of support.
That's great. I just want to mention that Tony Masciuta, whom you mentioned, isn't a public figure, but he has been the president of the board of Proctors for a long time and is quietly one of the most effective people that I've ever worked with in my life.
Yeah, he's just wonderful. He's just wonderful. He's just been great, and so it's just I think our lucky stars were there, and we were destined to become part of the Proctors family. So in Saratoga, we've not done anything Proctors-wise in Saratoga yet, and nothing with the Proctors name on it will be done until the building is finished. But from a public perspective for UPH, just people thinking that Proctors is coming to Saratoga, which is a really big deal, has really helped build our momentum. And I truthfully believe that when our building is done and Proctors is doing the programming and we have a Proctors presence in Saratoga, I think it's truly going to be one of the best things to ever happen to downtown Saratoga.
So I don't want to pass without mentioning your stained glass windows.
Our stained glass windows are spectacularly beautiful. They're Tiffany inspired. They're very, I call them Monet-esque. They're very abstract and the colors are beautiful. They're all out for restoration now. We have plexiglass right now, but they will be coming back. And the other beautiful thing about them is we have no religious iconry anywhere in the building. The Methodists built it that way. These are original windows. So they'll come back, they'll be very beautiful, and I don't see how anybody could ever take offense to them. They're just gorgeous.
Philip mentions them from time to time, and so I don't remember seeing them, but I look forward to their return.
Oh, they're stunning. They're just beautiful. So while we're closed down, we plan on not presenting anything until we reopen. And then when we reopen, it'll be Proctor's quality programming that'll be coming to UPH, which will really be good. But in the meanwhile, we're doing fundraisers. And pretty soon, we'll have no building to do them in because the building will become a hard hat area. So right now, we've closed our building to the public. The only thing we're doing in there are tours because we're starting to sort out all of the things in it and determine what needs to go to storage, what needs to go to the garbage, that kind of thing.
You wear long underwear in there to make sure it's going to
yeah,
be.
the basement is particularly cold these days. So while we're closed, we will be doing fundraisers. So a couple of local restaurants in town have done things for us, and we just had a big, very successful celebrity bartender event out at Saratoga National. But one thing we are trying to do in July, and I think we're going to do it, is we're going to do a paint and sip in our community room. And so we're going to have people paint a picture of the hall, which I think is very cool. And I brought this up because we hope to do a series of these, because we can do this one at UPH, but after July we won't be able to. So in the fall we'll do it at this Paint and Sip studio in Saratoga, and we thought we'd do a UPH windows night where they can paint the windows. And maybe a UPH door night because we have beautiful doors. There's just so many cool things.
Endless possibilities.
Endless possibilities. So we're excited about that.
And I guess people really enjoy those paint and sip events.
Yes, they do. Yeah. So it'll be fun.
Do you uncover great artists at them?
Well, maybe. Certainly not in any
Stay
group I've ever
tuned.
been with.
Stay tuned. So the programming that you anticipate having is going to be a lot of music.
Yeah, if you ask Philip, he will tell you we're going to do a great deal of Broadway cabaret, which I think will be very cool up there. It'll be a big music room because what I failed to say was when our great hall is finished upstairs, it will be an acoustically thrilling theater in the round that's going to seat over 700 people. It's going to be spectacular. So music will be great. It's going to be great in that room because the acoustical and sound grid will be right overhead, and we're bringing the audience in closer to the artists. So I think it's going to be great. I'm hoping we can do some live theater and maybe some Shakespeare in there because that would be kind of cool in the round, you know. We are making sure that our great hall is a fully flexible space. So we will have the ability to have a straight-on show, although we won't encourage that, really. We want people to get used to having it in the round, but we'll have the flexibility to do that. We'll also have the flexibility to clear the floor. So if we want to have a corporate event there or a gala or a wedding, we'll be able to do that. So it still fulfills our vision of being a lot of things to a lot of different people in a place where people can come together for numerous things.
What is it? Philip calls it to be the living room of the community?
Yeah, he calls it Saratoga Living Room, Saratoga's Community Living Room. I'm kind of calling it the heart of Saratoga because that's really what I feel it is. Mm-hmm. It is. It's the heart of Saratoga. It's going to be the linchpin downtown Saratoga where great performances will be had. Wonderful collaborations are already beginning between UPH, Cafe Lena, Yaddo, Skidmore, and SPAC. So it'll be a place where other venues that might be seasonal can do things with us year-round, which will be really cool. And I also think it's going to be a great thing for the long-term economic good health of downtown. I know it's going to be. We're projecting to go from 1.5 employees to go to 6 full-time with many part-time. And the projections also are that we will attract an additional 65,000 people a year to Saratoga, which is not a small amount of people. So I think we're positioned to really elevate the status of the arts in Saratoga for the benefit of all.
It is interesting to me to see, especially since the new director of SPAC has arrived, mm-hmm. the spirit of collaboration is just, it's evident in the region.
Elizabeth Sobel is terrific. She's a breath of fresh air. I met her when she showed up for a jazz show at UPH. Somebody had invited her and failed to tell me. And she came to the door and said, "I understand you're holding 2 seats for me." And I was like, "What?
Who are you?"
Who are you? And she introduced herself, and I said, "Of course I have seats for you," praying to God that I had those seats when I walked in the room. And I did have 2 seats right up front for her, and she just fell in love with the building, and we liked each other instantly, and it's been really great. It's all been uphill. She's a game changer for Saratoga, and I think we are too. So.
Well, it's a very exciting story.
Thank you. It's great.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you think we would add to this conversation?
I think that we are very interested in building awareness of the hall because people don't know about us yet. We will probably go by the name UPH because it's a lot easier than Universal Preservation Hall, but I'm trying to get the word out about us. So between now and September, while I still have a building, we're going to be offering tours. I mean, Mary Beth and I are there basically from 9 until 5 every day. So we love to have people call us or come in and take a tour and see this historical architectural beauty before it changes. It's going to really be beautiful when it's done, but it's going to change. Mm-hmm. And to tell everybody's friends, tell everybody about it, because we're just trying to get the word out so people become aware of us and what we're going to have to offer.
So maybe we can put your website address on this show so that people could get in touch with you, and then wherever you are working, sometimes in the cold and sometimes in the hot and sometimes elsewhere, that they can find you and arrange a tour or have a talk or whatever.
Our phones go right to our cell phones so we can get the call. They can go to www.universalpreservationhall.org, or they can contact us on our Facebook page. We do lots with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and it's a great way to communicate, and it's a great way to get the word out.
So you're getting the word out, and we really appreciate your coming to Schenectady today and talking about the history, and it's so interesting how it parallels what Schenectady went through to really have Proctors as it is today. So thank you again for coming. And I'd like to just say this is June 9th, 2017, and you've been watching the Proctors History Committee taping of the history of Proctors and all the things about Proctors, which, and we've had as our guest Teddy Foster, the campaign chairman, and we really appreciate your watching.